Greetings to all the viewers of our channel. The world stage is once more alive with significant occurrences, shifting the very foundations of global politics and security. Today, we'll delve into a series of these events, dissecting their complexities and implications for the international landscape. The actions of Russia in Eastern Europe have been met with increasing disapproval. European nations, particularly those in the Baltic and Scandinavian regions, have shown a unified front, mobilizing to confront what they view as Russian aggression. These nations have implemented measures intended to create significant obstacles for Russia. Yet despite these collective efforts, the strategies and military movements from Vladimir Putin have shown no sign of abatement, and his actions are perhaps emboldened by a perceived lack of international resistance. It seems Putin might be wagering on the continued restraint, if not indifference, from Western countries, from the Baltic region all the way to the Arctic, and spanning from Eastern Europe to the Mediterranean Sea. Many unfavorable movements were underway. It was perhaps part of Putin's calculation that his relations with former President Donald Trump would offer some degree of protection. However, Trump's actions post his presidential accession turned out to be a significant shock for Putin. The statements that came from Trump, in particular, became a central focus for global news. This time, Trump directly targeted Putin. Within the initial 24 hours of his presidency, Trump delivered a blunt message to Putin: withdraw from Ukraine immediately. This ultimatum was shared publicly via Trump's official platform. Trump further cautioned Putin, demanding he quickly find a resolution to end the conflict in Ukraine. He warned that any other course of action would result in grave consequences for Russia. The crucial question remains: can Trump's tough stance compel Russia to abandon its war efforts in Ukraine? And will Putin recalculate his strategic goals in response to these new challenges? Following this forceful declaration, President Trump announced a set of severe financial penalties and trade barriers against products originating from Russia. Should Vladimir Putin fail to promptly reach an agreement to end the war in Ukraine, Trump warned. Addressing Putin directly, Trump conveyed a clear ultimatum: make peace, or I will cripple your economy. These statements from the US president cast doubt over the nature of his present relationship with his Russian counterpart. Deal now. Halt this nonsensical conflict. Things are going to get decidedly worse if a deal isn't reached quickly. There will be no other option but to impose very steep duties, levies, and restrictions on everything Russia sells to the United States. Trump communicated on Truth Social. He presented two stark choices: an easy path of negotiation and a challenging one involving economic repercussions, stating the easy way is always better. Two principal factors seem to be behind this hardline stance. One is Trump's position in US internal political debates regarding Ukraine. The second is a clear demonstration that the West's tolerance with Russia is dwindling. Moreover, just as Trump was taking over his role, Xi Jinping and Putin held a telephonic conversation where they publicly committed to reinforcing their ties. This move presents a clear contradiction with Trump's rigorous stance. Conversely, some commentators interpret Trump's actions as a strategy to portray himself as a peacemaker, while others see it as a carefully planned maneuver to display his dissatisfaction with the protracted conflict which began in 2022. So the question remains: what does it signify that Trump, who once presented as having cordial relations with Putin and was even described as likely to improve ties with Russia by Western media, is now issuing this stark warning? Will this warning disrupt Putin's plans in Moscow, or is this all just a carefully crafted political show? I don't want to devastate Russia, but I will absolutely force them to act if it's necessary to end the war in Ukraine, Trump stated, threatening measures that would severely harm Russia's economy. Addressing the Kremlin, Trump emphasized, "The economy is your lifeline, and I'll sever it if you don't stop this conflict." This stance aligns with reports published by media sources such as Politico and CNBC, where he allegedly said, "You are destroying Russia. Russia is harming itself, and you are taking your country backwards by continuing this war." Now a significant query arises. Why is Trump employing such severe economic sanctions now, after previously being known for his amicable relations with Putin? One probable answer is that Trump is trying to give the image of being tough too, and that he's not backing down to Russia. He's trying to regain influence in US national politics. There are also people who criticize the Biden administration for its backing of Ukraine. With this statement, Trump aims to show his voter base that if I were in charge, I'd have resolved it far quicker. This approach has the potential to please both supporters of a peace treaty and those who take a hardline stance on Putin. Reports imply that the Kremlin believes the current U.S. administration is aiming to increase strain on the Ukraine situation. Furthermore, it's reported that during a discussion with Xi Jinping, Putin might have expressed that the U.S. threats of sanctions are not anything new, but the fact that Trump used such a direct and diplomatic tone signifies increasing pressure. After Trump's inauguration, Russia's President Vladimir Putin and China's President Xi Jinping held a phone call. As after all, Trump has made no secret of the fact that if I take office again, I will provide a framework in which Russia will feel threatened. Meanwhile, after Trump's inauguration, the association between Xi Jinping and Putin has also been called into question. She spoke to Putin by phone and stated that relations have tightened, which some interpreted as a form of intimidation aimed at the U.S., while others believe Beijing is looking for both financial and strategic advantages by sticking close to Russia. Yet, there are rumors that Xi declined to greet Putin, which some have interpreted as strained relations. So, it appears that the Russia-China alliance isn't as strong as portrayed. The Kremlin, nonetheless, will be keen to convey the message you cannot exclude us. We have China on our side. A critical question here is whether Trump can truly isolate Russia to a degree that cripples its economy, or if this is simply a political gesture on the international stage. Let's examine the substance of Trump's sanctions move. They could involve extra duties on Russian energy exports, imposing asset freezes on Russian oligarchs, and perhaps even actions aimed at ending trade with Russia altogether. Of course, any such measures would surely have repercussions for the global economy. One might reasonably ask, what more can Trump do, as the US and Europe have already introduced sweeping sanctions? The answer might lie in a complete prohibition of access to the dollar, severing Russian state-owned financial institutions from the international banking system, and employing stringent measures in transportation and logistics. It's plausible Trump is keeping such measures as his ultimate card. A source close to the Kremlin might have commented, Trump says, "Stop the absurd war in Ukraine." But the absurd part is that he thinks the US is capable of suffocating Russia with sanctions. Russia has for a long time stated that it's advancing an economic resilience strategy. This involves redirecting energy exports to Asia, exploring the SWIFT system alternatives, and seeking independence from the dollar. But it also cannot be ignored that since the beginning of the Ukrainian conflict, the Russian economy has faced serious challenges. There have been notable fluctuations in the value of the ruble, foreign investment has receded, and imports of high-tech goods have been blocked. Even though Russia might not be completely isolated, it would be foolish to assume Trump's sanctions would have no impact. Imposing more severe restrictions on Russia could bring about instability in commodity markets, higher energy costs, and novel disruptions to global supply chains. Furthermore, the big question remains, what compromises might Trump be offering Putin? Perhaps directly, or through covert channels? The scenario includes Russia's possible withdrawal from Ukraine, or Russia retaining some of the territory, or Ukraine's commitment not to join NATO. Make a deal now, or you'll face taxes and duties, Trump emphasized. In fact, this situation could lead to a conversation within Ukraine regarding whether or not to concede some of its land. However, the Kyiv administration has stated clearly that they will not relinquish a single inch of their homeland. Another concern that arises is, can Trump genuinely implement such drastic measures? Certain experts have highlighted the challenges of imposing significant trade sanctions without the backing of the U.S. Congress. Despite that, Trump has utilized various loopholes in his previous administration to introduce duties, raise taxes, and even initiate trade wars. Therefore, it's legitimate to ask if Trump can circumnavigate the congressional hurdle. The answer might be that if Trump is determined and can act citing national security issues, he has considerable leeway to maneuver. This news should act as an alarm bell for the Russian economy. Putin has not directly responded to these announcements. A Kremlin spokesperson mentioned they'll be observing the approach of the new U.S. administration, adding that they are not afraid of sanctions since they have seen them before. However, the Russian media noted that Trump might have a different viewpoint compared to Biden, even though he is being challenged domestically. It might all simply be a negotiation strategy. The well-worn phrase "Putin loves Trump" has been in use since the 2016 elections. Now the question arises, has Trump turned his back on Putin? The best way to comprehend this complicated picture is this. Trump is not pleased with the duration of the Ukrainian war. He maintains the view of "I'll end it in a day." He publicly stated if Putin doesn't conclude this war, he'll inflict severe sanctions upon Russia. Simultaneously, he's conveying to his voters that "I am the powerful leader who will achieve peace." Putin, in return, desires to engage with Xi Jinping in order to send a clear message that Russia isn't isolated. We have China on our side. However, the position of Xi Jinping isn't as clear-cut. The fact that he seemingly declined to waive could be interpreted as a signal that Beijing is not fully supportive of Russia. It remains uncertain whether these changes will be to Ukraine's benefit or not. In light of these comments, how will Ukraine respond? The Kiev administration will likely reiterate the view that pressure on Russia is welcome, but no one should anticipate them giving up any land. There is concern in Ukraine that Trump might propose handing some territories to Russia to ensure a peace settlement. The Zelensky team states that they will resolve everything through diplomacy, but that their territorial boundaries are absolute and not up for discussion. The Russian opposition also argues that the conflict should cease, and Trump's threat of sanctions could pressure the Kremlin into coming to the negotiation table. Maybe this internal pressure will reduce Putin's scope for action. That being said, the Putin regime could easily utilize an external enemy narrative to strengthen their support domestically. The external pressure could be turned into a propaganda point for the Kremlin. See, the West is trying to attack us again. Ultimately, Trump has threatened Putin with sanctions if the war in Ukraine does not end. This stance might appear surprising, but it is actually aligned with Trump's publicly stated policy of America first, duties for everyone if need be. This time, the focus is on Russia, and it implies that tolerance regarding the conflict in Ukraine is diminishing, and that Trump might employ a different diplomatic approach on the international stage. For Putin, it means a new set of challenges. Europe and the Biden administration have already played the sanctions card, and now Trump is following suit, with potentially more aggressive measures. Trump is threatening Putin with the end of his economy, telling him sit at the table, or I'll take care of it. It is not yet clear if these statements will go beyond tough talk and actually be implemented. But in global politics, even harsh rhetoric has the capacity to change the landscape. How permanent is Russia's pivot to China? How genuine was the discussion between Xi and Putin? All these factors will shape this picture, and so will the military actions in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. For the moment, due to Trump's warning, it's likely that pressure on the Kremlin will intensify from both a political and financial perspective. It's possible that Putin will alter his strategy and attempt to undermine the threats made by Trump. Perhaps he will accelerate the conflict in the hope that a rapid victory would remove the impact of the newly introduced sanctions. The only certainty is that the war in Ukraine will not conclude without further complexities. To summarize, Trump warns Putin, end the war, or sanctions will be imposed. This goes beyond just a headline, and many factors can be found at play, including national political rivalry in the US, Russia's international position, China's role, and the future of Ukraine. This move could serve as a message to Russia that the sanctions will be greatly increased, thus backing the Kremlin into a corner. Still, what the outcome will be, only time will tell. It might be possible that Putin ignores Trump's offer to come to the table and opts to continue the war. It is also possible that some are hopeful that a political change in the US will result in a new compromise with Russia. Yet Trump's severe stance raises the crucial question of whether there isn't an expected trade-off. It would seem that the Ukraine problem is unavoidable in the Trump-Putin relationship. How will Russia react to these threats in the weeks ahead? How will the association between Xi and Putin be influenced by these events? And what will be the course of the conflict in Ukraine? These questions will continue to be analyzed on the global stage. Currently, it's obvious that Trump has played the "your game is over" card to Putin, saying, either you back down or I'll wreck your economy. This will now restrict the Kremlin's options and reignite discussion around finding a resolution to the war. It appears that the world has entered a new phase in which significant events seem to be accelerating, with Trump's outburst and his subsequent restraint. However, it would be incorrect to assume Putin would back down, because Trump has said so. There are numerous dynamics such as Moscow's decision to stop the conflict, China's degree of support, internal Russian politics, and the determination of Ukraine that need to be considered. In the final analysis, Trump's message to Putin, "Stop the war or I will impose sanctions," will have a ripple effect on the global stage. While Russia tries to determine whether this is real or just posturing, Europe is concerned about its energy supplies and overall security. Ukraine, on the other hand, is on high alert, fearing that they will be sold out in peace negotiations. So what's your opinion? Will Trump be able to push Putin into a corner? Or will Putin ignore these threats? Will the European economy suffer if they join in on this new wave of economic sanctions, or is this the right moment to tell Russia to stop? Will this be beneficial to Ukraine, or will they become a bargaining chip between great powers? Do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and leave a comment telling us where you are watching from. This is very important for the channel's success. Also, please, stay until the end of the video, as we will draw conclusions in the end.